All right, we're going to get started, and we're using microphones because we're recording. So that's what we have to do. So thanks everybody for coming. My name's Susan Shea, and this is Anton Painter, if you don't know him. And we're on the Walpole team, and we're just happy that you all came, and hopefully you learn a lot about what you might need to do to get started to buy a home. So we want to make this very interactive. So if you have questions as we go through, please ask, raise your hand, just interject, whatever. We're going to have our partners come up and talk, so you'll probably have questions for them as well. But just feel free to interject and ask questions as you go. So I want to introduce our team first of all. We're on the Walpole team, and Bruce and Jill Walpole are our fearless leaders.
Wave your hand, Bruce. Wave your hand.
And of course, Anton and myself, and then Audra, I don't know where she went. She's at the front door. So Audra's our business manager. So she kind of handles everything on the back end. So we are a team, and we work together hopefully as seamlessly as we can. We have meetings every week, so we learn about everybody's transactions, what's going on, what's happening with our business. So if something happens and one of us can't be there for something, there's always somebody who can step in and help you out through your entire process. So that's just that's the best thing about being on a team, is that we can fill in for each other and just be there. And you, as a buyer or a seller, won't miss a beat. You won't know anything is different, really. So with that, I'm going to introduce our partners. First, we have the Levels. We have Darren and Haiti Level, and they are our lender partners, and they're going to get up and talk a little bit. And then we have Levi Mrunzinski. He is with Goosehead Insurance, and he's our insurance partner. And we have Chris Harwood, and he is with Harwood Home Inspections, and he is your home inspector. So he's somebody you're going to get to know as well.
Clicker is not working.
So sorry. We have.
Let's try that again. Sorry, y'all. The computer might be frozen. Let's see. Hey, Audra, can I get your help with this part?
There, I got it.
Oh, it's working now?
We have slides for everybody.
Okay, cool.
So there's the Levels, there's Levi and Chris Harwood. Okay.
Absolutely. So before we get started, I just want to say thank you all for coming. We're just so grateful to see you all here, the faces I don't know and the faces I do know. So again, like Susan says, we want to make this interactive. So at any point during this, we don't want it to just be a lecture. It's more of an open forum. So if you have questions, just raise your hand. We'll get them addressed. That's part of the advantage of working with a team. If there's something that Susan or I don't know, we have Bruce and we have Jill. We also have all of our partners as well, so they can get those questions answered for you. But before we start, I just want to see by a raise of hands. Let's just start with, if you've ever thought this, I just want you to raise your hand. If you've ever thought, I can't afford to buy a home right now, just raise your hand. All of us, unanimously. Awesome. Well, the truth of it is, if you don't, until you do the math or until you talk to a lender, you really don't know what you can or can't afford. So part of what we'll do today, or the reason why we have our lender partners here, is so if you have questions, you can gain clarity. Question number 2, if you've ever thought, I should wait until the market gets better, raise your hand. A lot of us. There's never a bad time to buy the right home. It's just about creating the right plan. Question number 3, if you ever thought, I don't have the money for a down payment. Yeah. Part of what we'll talk about today is there are down payment assistance programs. Some of you guys may have heard about them. I think it's something that doesn't get talked about enough. And so that's another reason we have our lender partners here, so that we can talk about that and discuss that. Question number 4, if you ever thought, I can't buy a home because my credit isn't very good. Pretty much questions that we've all probably thought at one point or another. And the truth is there's always options, and the important part is to make a plan. So if that's where you're at right now, making a plan so that you can improve that and get to the points where you're in a better situation, that's all part of the process. Just a couple more. We'll just do a couple more. If you ever thought that buying a home seems way too complicated, anybody ever thought that? It's probably why we're here today, because we don't know what the whole process looks like. Maybe you know a little bit about it. That's part of what we're going to do today. And then if you've ever thought you should pay off your student loan debt, for all of my friends over here, if you've ever thought that you should pay off your student loan debt before buying a home, raise your hand. Yeah, so we'll talk about that today as well. The truth is, student loan debt doesn't prevent you from buying a home. And so now that we've talked a little bit about our fears, what I do want to do is invite Bruce up, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the truth of the market right now. Again, talking about it's important to know what you don't know. Bruce is going to tell us a little bit about what's actually going on right here in Texas.
Good morning. One other quick introduction. Josh is on the team too. He's the guy with the big red beard. That's Josh Walpole. That's my son, but he does commercial. So if you're buying an apartment complex rather than just a home, you might want to talk to him. Anyway, so yeah, I'm a numbers guy, and I love the numbers, but I love numbers because numbers tell a story. So what I'm going to focus on is the story, not the numbers. Okay. But some quick numbers here in our market. When I say our market, we work across the Metroplex, quite honestly, but we focus in Collin County. And so these numbers are Collin County numbers. So the first number I'll highlight is 94.5% of list. Homes right now are selling on average at 94.5% of their list price. Now, that's an average number, and I'll jump to the far right-hand number, which is average days to sell, days on market, or how long does it take to get a contract? Right now, it's running about 50. You see there it's 49 to 54. So if you see a home that's been listed for about 50 days, you could expect that your closing price or your closing price on contract would be about 94.5 or 95% of that. Let's do some quick numbers, okay? $400,000 asking price. You're looking for a home's $400,000 asking price. It's been on the market for 50 days. What would be a good offer? 380? I was going to exclude you from saying that. But he's right. That would be a good closing price, but that wasn't my question. What would be a good offer price? No, 400, you'd probably get it right away. But if you expect to close at 380, because that's just what the numbers are, what would be a good offer price? 370, 375, 350 might be a bit aggressive because 10% off of asking price is a lot. And it tends to insult the seller. We don't want to do that if we're entering into negotiations, right? So on $400,000, if average closes at 95%, do the math, that works out to 380 is where you would expect to close. A good offer price would be 370, 375. Okay. That's why these numbers tell a story. Okay. The other one there is that we've got increasing inventory. And this is, this actually, I meant to update. I looked at the stats this morning, actually, before I came. And Collin County right now has 10% increase in inventory since this time last year. Point is, there's more homes out there. That means that there's more choice for buyers, which means that sellers are a little bit more desperate to sell their home. So let me work on this $400,000 example again. So we see a house that's listed at $400,000. It's been on the market for 5 days. Would you still offer 375? Not likely, because you're not in the average range. If it's a beautiful home, it came on, maybe it's a little underpriced because they're motivated to sell quickly. So they've listed it at $400,000. You're not going to be at 95% of list. You'll probably be closer to 98, 99% of list price. So then that adjusts where you plan to put in your offer. That's why numbers are important. You need to have a context of what's out there. And so we've got more choices, more negotiating power, less pressure from bidding wars. Back in 2022, it was nutso. Like people were putting in 20, 30 offers on a home, and you hope and pray that yours was the one that was going to win. It was crazy. We don't have that anymore. We have rare times there are multiple offers. Still happens on special homes or homes that have been priced aggressively, but it's not commonplace. So that gives a buyer more time to make informed decisions. And the result of all of this is we're back to a more balanced, healthy market. And that's something that I really want you to take away from today, is that we're returning to normal. We're going back to 2022 when our interest rates were 2.5%. for a mortgage, and homes were selling with multiple offers all over the place, and prices were high as a result. We're not going back there. That's not a normal market. That was a blip that had never happened prior to that, and it's anticipated will never happen again going forward. So what we're returning to is a normal market. Next slide.
She got it for you.
Oh, thank you. So where are the opportunities specifically in our market? So first thing is new construction buyers. New construction has some great financial incentives. They are trying to attract people to their new builds, and so they're giving discounts on their homes in order to get you in there. Some of those discounts are in the form of interest rate buy downs. So D.R. Horton, as an example, we recently saw they've got an interest rate program. It's 1.99% in the first year, 2.99% in the second year, and then 3.99 for every year all the way to 30 years. D.R. Horton. And that's a special program that they have in select neighborhoods. Those select neighborhoods are neighborhoods where they need to sell the houses. Those opportunities are new construction. So where do we see new construction? Out on the edge, right? So that comes with its own challenges. Traffic, long commute times. There's not a grocery store for miles. Lowe's is a long ways away. So, the infrastructure is not there. But those are opportunities financially, and we're seeing those in Prosper, Salina, Melissa, Anna, in those areas that are out there. Okay. Resale opportunities, though, so places like Plano and Allen, there are good opportunities there because home buyers are getting smart, or maybe their realtors are getting smart, and they're offering similar concessions to allow for buy down opportunities. So when you put in an offer of $380 on that $400,000 house, you can also say, and I want $10,000 cash back so I can buy my rate down. And you get them to pay for the buy down. Okay. So there's opportunities there. And then of course, some of those homes have long days on market. So if you're above average on days on market right now, average is 50. If you're above average, you're at 60, 70, 80, 100 in some cases, that seller's going to be more motivated and there's opportunity there. Okay, so keep that in mind. First-time home buyers, as Antone already alluded to, there are first-time home buyer incentive programs. Darren's going to talk about that some more later, so I won't go into that. But first-time home buyers, some great opportunities there. It's a delicate balance. I don't want to give away the message, but you can't make too much or you're not qualified. But you've got to make enough to be able to pay for that special program. That special program comes with slightly higher interest rates, which makes your monthly payment just a whisker. You're going to have to give up a Starbucks coffee, once a week kind of thing. Okay, next slide. Okay, so why is North Dallas? Oh, I don't know if you know. Little tip, pro tip: don't believe everything you hear on the news. Okay. I don't know if you're aware, but you can't believe everything you see on TV or on the internet. They will tell you that the real estate market prices are going down. We're going to have a tough year, blah, 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 blah. That may be, but that's a national phenomenon. It's not North Dallas. 120 corporate relocations in 5 years keeps our market growing and keeps our market strong. That keeps our price appreciation or a price increase positive. And so going back to normal means that North Dallas, you're going to see about a 3% price increase year over year if you kind of extrapolate it out. So that's what we're returning to. So what that means is consistent population growth. Yes, we've got that strong job market. Yes, I just said expect our annual appreciation to be between 1.5 and 3%. So it's a good market to get into. You're not in a declining market. You're in an increasing market. And then, we've got amenities, infrastructure. You want to see a football game, hockey game, whatever you want, you've got it here in the Metroplex. So that's all good. Point I'm making here is that we have a market where it's a good investment opportunity, even if that investment is in your own home. Okay, next slide. Okay, that's it. That's all I had. Thank you. Questions? Yeah. All the way back to the first slide. Who's got that?
Susan, it's behind her back.
Okay.
She's
Yes.
hiding it.
So these statistics are this month's statistics?
This is, well, okay, so good question. So 94.5% is December. 50 days on market is December for Collin County, but the middle one, inventory, is increase in inventory since this time last year.
Do you expect those statistics to shift with the seasonality of this home?
Great. Thank you for touching on that. Yeah, seasonality makes a difference. Good. Thanks, prompting. I'll get you later. Yeah. So yeah, seasonality makes a difference. In December, everybody's thinking about Christmas, and in January, everybody's thinking about how to pay for Christmas. And so those 2 months are pretty slow in the real estate market. That means if you happen to be relocating and you need to sell your house, you're more desperate. So from a buyer's point of view, buying a house in those slow markets, you've got negotiating leverage. Okay, but we will see a smaller increase in inventory as we move into summer because more buyers enter the market. Typically, the seasonality starts at spring break. That's when people start entering the market. It peaks when school's out, Memorial Day, and it runs high then until school goes back in again in August. Okay. Shorter average days on market for sure. 50 is kind of where we're peaking over the course of the year. It would drop to somewhere between 35 and 40 in the summertime. Okay. Anything else I can answer for you?
All things.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Any other questions? This is context. If you're thinking of buying a house, know your market, know the seasonality numbers, know your days on market, know your leverage, know your negotiating power. And that's where we come in.
Mhm.
Obviously, we're in it every day, day to day. We know where we've got leverage and where we don't. So, okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Are these numbers just, I know you mentioned that the left and right, based on December of last year,
Mhm.
what's in the middle is year over year?
Yes, correct.
And so is this,
This is everything all combined for Collin County, an average. Yes.
And
Uh,
I'm
And
sorry.
by
Go
the
ahead.
way, any of us can pull more data. There's lots more statistics that we follow. There is a reason to look at some of the statistics as a mean versus an average. I didn't want to get too geek out on that kind of stuff, but yeah, there are other numbers that we can look at that tell a story, but the story is pretty consistent. Okay, good question.
And back to what you were saying about the national average versus what's happening right here, Bruce. Would you say a 20% inventory increase is, we're pretty lucky to have that here in DFW?
Yeah, and in fact, that number, when I pulled it this morning, it's a 10% increase. And so our inventory is being consumed as buyers are getting back into the market and consuming that inventory. On a national scale, it is higher than that. Inventory, there's another metric that we follow is inventory can be months of supply. If there was never another house listed in our market, how long would our inventory last until we ran out of houses? The national average is about 5 months right now, that if they turned off the tap and never listed another house, we would have enough houses listed that it would last us for about, on a national level, about 5 months. Here, we're running about 3. Normally, when we return to a normal market, I'm sorry, right now we're 4. Normal market is 3 for Dallas. But that's an odd statistic to follow. But anyway, any other questions? Oh, please.
Why we're here today.
Yeah.
now, it's spring break?
Yep.
It's gonna be somewhat like a.
It's on a ramp.
Yeah.
Yes.
You say, like, for people who actually buy, right?
Mhm.
Or, I guess.
Yeah, so let me answer your last question first and I'll back into it. But as the market ramps up from spring break through to Memorial Day, that ramp really represents new buyers entering the market. Basic law of economics is supply and demand. You're going to have more buyers in the market. That means more competition, right? So your leverage is weakened as a buyer. Your opportunity as a buyer is best in the off months. And then you asked a question about new builds versus resale market. I don't think there's I don't think they react differently to that seasonality. They react the same to the seasonality. Builders will be slightly more motivated to sell homes when they're in the slow market. So you might see some additional incentives, but that's also the same phenomenon for resale people in Plano and Allen. If they're selling in January and February and they need to sell because they're relocating or some family thing has happened and they need to sell, they're going to be more motivated too. So I think the new construction market and the resale market react the same way to that seasonality. Okay, good question.
The same one thing on that too. new builds typically, uh, when they are kind of at the end of that specific phase and they have 5 houses left, they have to sell those before they can really move into the next phase. They're going to start making deals on those houses. So, you're kind of looking at it, it's going to vary by builder and what they have going on. So if they're ending, then they need to get rid of those houses to move on to the next. So that's going to be a good place to get discounts.
Can you define new builds? Am I buying a lot and they're building it and I have to wait a year? Or is it a new build that's completed this month, next month, 3 months?
It's both, actually. If you're buying at the end of the phase, then you're going to buy a spec home. And that means everything's already been picked out. The tile, the carpet, the paints, everything's picked out. You're buying what they've already chosen for that house and that lot. If you're moving into a new phase, then yes, you can buy that. You can choose the lot you want. You can they'll give you a few houses to choose from because they do have to, there's a whole thing that they have to do based on what houses go in those lots. But you'll get to choose the house, the lot, and then you'll go to the design center and you'll get to choose everything that goes in it. That's going to be a little bit longer. That's going to be, I would say new build is around 6 from soil to move in is 6 months or so. It's going to vary obviously by builder, and the weather plays a factor in that. We're moving into the spring months, and we're going to get some rain. We're going to get bad weather. That's going to slow production down on houses. But yeah, so.
Thank you. Sure. That's great. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right. So everybody should have this in their folder. And this is just, I call this the home buyer wheel. This is what we're going to cover today. And this is basically the process from start to finish of what it's like to buy a house, from meeting with your real estate agent, getting pre-approved with your lender, starting your search on homes, all the way through closing. And so we're going to kind of go through every one of these little sections and again, ask questions as we go through this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first step is obviously to meet with a real estate professional. Part of what Bruce was talking about is somebody who knows what's going on right here. As somebody who's from Seattle, the market over there is drastically different than what we actually have going on here. Over here, we actually have homes that are moving, and there's actually room for negotiation, things like that. So somebody who knows what's going on right here in Dallas is super important. And this is really the first step. I just want to ask a quick question. Sorry, I'm going to steal this from you. I'm going to ask a quick question. If you were to sit down, because this is the step where you sit down and say, I'm looking for this, X, Y, and Z in a home, and your agent helps you kind of get a good idea of what that might look like. But if you were to sit down with the agent right now, who already has an idea of what they're looking for in a home? I would love to, 3 people just tell me what's one thing that you'd be looking for in a home. Privacy fence? Absolutely. Mother-in-law suite. That's a good one. 2.5 to 3 bathrooms. No, go ahead. You can give me one more. Give me one more. Okay. You got a good picture already.
I think all the ladies are wanting a walk-in closet.
Probably.
And just a little caveat here, what you want in your first home will change with what you want in your second home. Like laundry room is a big thing for me. Our laundry room, I hate it. So our next house is going to be a good laundry room. But I didn't know that until I got the laundry room I got.
Absolutely. So when you sit with an agent, you're going to be kind of describing these things, and they're going to help you really just paint a picture of what you're looking for, and you'll tell them, where you're looking, things like that. For any of you who want to come join me in Anna, like Bruce said, that's a growing area, so feel free to come be my neighbor in Anna. But yeah, that's really the first step, is just to meet with an agent, and they should be presenting you these numbers. Obviously, the numbers that Bruce presented today, if you sit down with somebody a year from now, or even just this summer, it may look different. So you want to know what's happening probably within the next 90 days.
And I would encourage people to talk to a couple of different realtors, because you need to find somebody who fits with you, who you connect with, who you feel like is listening to you, who's understanding you. You don't want to run into headbutting with this person all the time. So
Absolutely.
I would definitely talk with a couple of people.
Absolutely. And before we move to the next slide, just a quick pop trivia question. Out of all the people who have a real estate license in the DFW Metroplex, can somebody just guess how many of them haven't done a single transaction besides Preston? 80%? Good guess. It's up there. 68, it's about as close as you can get. 70% of agents or people who have a real estate license haven't used it within the last year
DFW.
in DFW.
Okay. All right. So after you meet with your real estate agent or during the process, the very first thing you really want to do is start your pre-approval. You want to know what you can afford. So with that, I'm going to bring up, I guess, Darren and Haiti. I don't know if she's going to come up also or not, but.
He's coming up or no?
And Darren's going to talk to you about the process.
Awesome. We'll go to that next slide.
Do you have the clicker? Yeah,
I put it down.
Oh, which way?
to the right.
Okay, sorry. You have this handout also.
Yeah, yeah, if you can see that, God bless you. All right, so, getting pre-approved. So, I mean, I think the perception, and it was alluded to a little bit earlier, is that, you have to have perfect credit to buy a home. And the truth is, you could actually have a 500 credit score and buy a house, right? So some of the loan programs, and they're all a little bit different, but you don't need perfect credit to buy a home. You also don't need 20% down to buy a home. You could have a 0% down payment and purchase a home, and we'll talk about down payment assistance, as we get through, this presentation. And what you see up there is a fee worksheet, but, from a pre-approval process, right? So you don't know what you don't know. You may have the ability to purchase a home right now. Because again, it doesn't take $50,000 to buy it. It doesn't take 800 credit. Most of the folks we work with, they're not going to have, I don't have 800 credit, and I don't have $50,000 sitting in the bank. So the entry point to get into a home could be as little as $0 down. It could be as little as $0 out of pocket, meaning you're buying a house without spending a money. If you couple that with, people have talked about seller concessions.
Mm-hmm.
If you couple that with down payment assistance. So, getting started is all about just taking that first step. So a loan pre-approval process, it's indicative data. We're going to ask you your legal name, where you live, who you work for, how much money you make, and how much money you have in the bank. I mean, that's truly a loan application. And then from there, what we're going to do is we're going to do a soft pull of credit, right? So if you're going to somebody and they say, well, I've got to do a hard pull or a hard impact on your credit, tell them no, because I can get the same information from the credit bureaus by doing a soft pull, no impact on your credit. It's going to tell me what you have financed. It's going to tell me what your credit scores are. You've told me what your income is. And that's truly what we need to see where you're at, right? So one of two outcomes are going to happen. You're going to be pre-approved, and we're going to give you a worksheet that's going to look like this. It says, okay, if you bought a $400,000 house, here's what the financials look like. Here's what kind of loan program we're using. Here's what your monthly payment is. And here's how much money you're going to need at the closing table to buy that house. But let's say that there is something wrong. Let's say that it is credit score related, or let's say that you're carrying a significant amount of debt and we can't get you approved to buy a house today. What we're going to do is we're going to put together a roadmap. And that could be, with younger buyers, sometimes it's a lack of credit, right? It's not that you have bad credit. You just don't have enough payment history for the credit bureaus to give you a good credit score. And that happens all the time. And there's great ways, whether that's becoming an authorized user on your parents' accounts or a family member's accounts. It's about going out and getting a secured card. It's about doing Experian Boost. There's a multitude of ways to drive your credit scores up if credit is the issue. So as a lender, we're never going to tell anybody no. We're just going to tell them not yet. right? So what do you need to do? We don't send people to credit repair. We've been doing this a long time. We can look at a credit report and tell you X, Y, and Z, and it may be 3 months, it may be 6 months, or it may be a year. To people, they have the ability to purchase a home. It's just the time frame in which they do it, right? So they don't teach this stuff in school, right? If I were developing curriculum, they would tell you the importance of credit scores in high school, right? Nobody knows, right? So the first time somebody's exposed to that, I may think that if I make a payment that I've got out there on something, that when I make that payment really doesn't matter, because nobody told me that that due date had any sort of relevance, right? But if you make that payment, but it's late every month, it has a negative impact. Depending upon who you're listening to, they'll tell you, Dave Ramsey says, don't establish any debt. But if I'm going to go buy a house, I have to have some debt to buy that. Dave doesn't have to. He's got $1 billion in the bank. But you're going to need some debt. You're going to need a payment history, because the credit bureau looks at that from an algorithm perspective. And they're like, does this individual, are they credit worthy to purchase that house? Right. So, it's one of those things where I know it's daunting. Most likely you've never been down that path, but the process to get pre-approved is as simple as a phone call where we spend 10 minutes talking about you. Again, legal name, date of birth, social security number, where have you lived for the last 2 years? Who have you worked for the last 2 years? How much money do you make? It is as simple as that. And from that, we'll know your ability to buy a house, or if we need to put together a roadmap to get you to that point. Questions on that? Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It sounds like you're the guy.
This is the gray hair.
Maybe I could just ask for help for that.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't know how to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like if you're going to turn it into a rental properties, there's a way to create, whether you have a lease agreement in place. So there's a multitude of ways it may be possible. And if it's not, I'll tell you why. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's this old, right, not to get completely off path here, but people build wealth. People build generational wealth through owning real estate. And to me, it's still the American dream. Everybody should have the opportunity to own property. Andrew Carnegie, an old guy from way back, said 90% of millionaires became millionaires through owning real estate. And it still holds true today. So, starting to pay yourself versus paying rent or somebody else's mortgage is the ultimate goal for everybody in this room, right? So I can't tell which one we have up here.
Yeah, I think it.
Oh, thank you. No glasses. So you guys have this in front of you, I wanted to go through just a couple of different examples. This first worksheet, again, we used a $400,000 purchase price, and this is down payment assistance, right? So there are a multitude of state programs, national programs that are down payment assistance. And so what does down payment assistance means? It means you're getting money to cover part or all of the down payment to purchase a home. Right. So in this example, I'm using TSHAC, which is just a state agency. There's TSHAC, TDHCA, SEF. There's a plethora of them. And these are programs that are separate of what they call the agencies. So agencies are, if you've heard the terms Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or FHA, or if you're a veteran, VA, those are the agencies. They actually hold the money. As a lender, I'm an intermediary and you're the consumer, right? So we follow their rules. It's their money. We got to play in their sandbox. But then you've got these separate entities from a down payment assistance perspective to help first-time home buyers purchase a home. And I think Bruce had alluded to it earlier. There's some caveats when it comes to down payment assistance. It's by county, but generally speaking, if the income on the loan application is over $130,000, then most of the down payment assistance won't work because you make too much money. There are some other ones that will work. Credit score requirements, generally, you're going to have a 620, right? So I said, well, you could do 500. Well, that's without down payment assistance. Down payment assistance sets their own rules and says you have to have a 620 credit score, your middle credit score, to qualify for down payment assistance. So this example, somebody wants to purchase a $400,000 home. We're using down payment assistance with you as a home buyer getting 5% of the loan amount in down payment assistance. That equates to $19,300. So you're getting $19,000 to purchase that home, and that goes towards your 3.5% down payment and your closing cost. So the interest rate is a fixed 30-year at 6.75%. So if you look at that, you should know, and I'm estimating property taxes and homeowners insurance using Collin County. But if I go out and I find a $400,000 home, my mortgage payment is going to be somewhere around $3,500 a month, right? That's just based on property taxes, based on the interest rate, based on homeowners insurance, and based on something called PMI, which most loans have unless you put 20% down. That's what that payment's going to look like. But when you factor in the down payment assistance of $19,300, you could buy that house for $9,300 out of pocket. Or you could have great real estate agents and you've got sellers that are somewhat desperate in this market. You could tell them, I'll give you $400,000 for that house. You give me $9,300 in seller concessions. You don't bring any money to closing. And quite honestly, in this market, so right now when we get contracts in, over 50% of the contracts we receive on individuals buying homes have seller concessions. So it's not this random thing where you might have the opportunity. It happens over 50% of the time because you've got inventory. Like Bruce said, there's inventory in the market. They're motivated. You know, it's supply and demand. They want your business. So they're willing to give you money to purchase a home. So take down payment assistance, take a seller concession, you're buying a house and now you're paying yourself back versus paying rent to somebody else. Questions on that? Yes, sir.
I had was,
Yes, sir.
is this like on average or is this like?
On average.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Got it.
Good question. Yeah, it's one of those things when it comes to property taxes, you could have, depending upon the city, right? It gets a little bit challenged. What I tell folks is, you know what, these are estimates, but when you're out there shopping for homes and you find that house, shoot me the address. I'll pull the tax record from Collin County. And then I can tell you going in plus or minus the homeowner's insurance, this is what your mortgage payment, you know, because you want to know that, right? Because I may be able to qualify you for a lot, but you look at that and you're like, I can't do $5,000 a month on my mortgage. Yeah, great question.
The other thing that I kind of just hope that you can expound a little bit more is seller concessions
Yes, sir.
and like the difference between seller concessions versus like
Yep, great question. So down payment assistance is that state agency simply giving you money. Seller concessions are coming from the individual selling that house where they've agreed to give you X amount of money for you to purchase that home. They work in the same fashion, right? I mean, you could take your down payment assistance and your seller concessions, and now I've got one big bucket of money that's going to cover my down payment and all of my closing costs. Yep. Bruce, you had a question?
Yeah, can you comment on, we've been talking about down payment assistance, but are there other things like first responder, teacher things, that kind of stuff?
Absolutely, right. So they call it heroes, right? So if you're a first responder, a teacher, a nurse, firefighter, police officer, those are called heroes. And there are special incentives in down payment assistance specific to them. So just, you know, if anybody in here would be defined as one of those heroes, absolutely, right? So we're looking out for those folks that look after us, right? I mean, so these programs all have embedded in it a heroes program, which without getting too much into the weeds, there's also something called MCC, which is specific to heroes and you get it for free. And from a tax advantage perspective, it's a great opportunity. Not only to get down payment assistance, but to get some tax credits as well that are very beneficial. Thank you, Bruce.
I had the privilege of doing gift funds twice last year.
Yes, you did.
Can you comment on gift funds and how that works? Are there concerns around being taxed on gift funds or just what?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it actually take a little bit more broad, right? So we're talking about down payment assistance here, but to open it up just a little bit. Let's say you don't have money sitting in the bank. We choose not to use, what can you use for down payment? You could use gift funds, like you said, if you have a 401k, you can borrow from your own 401k. But when it comes to gift funds, I mean, nobody in here is going to be subject to taxation. I think the annual exemption on what you can gift to an individual, I believe is like 11 or $12 million. Yeah, the lifetime exemption. So if you're hitting that, I want to be your friend. So you can gift. So if you've got a family member that wants to gift you money, there are no tax implications. We don't report anything to the IRS. It's all specific. If you did gift that lifetime exemption, obviously from a tax perspective, you'd want to report that, but I've never ran into a situation where anybody was hitting their lifetime exemption of, again, I think it's 11 or $12 million when it comes to gifting, but gifting is an option as well.
And it can be as little as a couple $1,000 all
Yeah.
the way up to,
Yeah.
you know, there's no amount other
Yep.
than
So
11 million.
more, so that, you know, that's down payment assistance. I mean, and that's one way, right? So that's an FHA loan. It's also available on a conventional loan. It's also available for veterans as well. So there's, you know, I don't want to give too many examples, but it's available through all the different agencies or loan programs that are out there. Yes, ma'am. Well, so like if we're talking about like the down payment assistance providers,
Yeah.
only one at a time. Yeah. Yep. Good question.
But you could have a down payment and a gift.
A down payment and a gift. Absolutely. Yep. You could have a down payment, a gift, and seller concessions. All of those can be combined. You just couldn't get two forms of down payment assistance from a state agency. Yep. Yep.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. That's why we're here.
Mentioned like, oh.
Pid
Mhm.
pud, mud. Yeah. Run. No, just kidding.
Specific to, like, is it, I guess you're specific to the area that you're looking
Mhm.
at. So is that something that you're gonna be paying the lifetime?
So, and you jump in where you want, but PIDs, PUDs, MUDs, they're all an additional tax, generally speaking, in new developments,
Mhm.
right? But it's not all new developments, but I would say it's the majority
Mostly.
of new developments, right? So you have your property taxes and then you have these improvement taxes, right? They are for a set number of years. I think generally they're 20 years.
2030.
So if you're, most people are not going to be in there for 20 years, so you're paying it for the life of the time that you're in there, but they are additional. So I'm looking at it from a property tax perspective. Most new construction communities, not all, are going to have those PIDs or those PUDs or those MUDs, all the same thing, just additional taxes on you as the homeowner.
And
It could be subdivision
development.
by the subdivision. I mean, yeah, development to development. It's a great question to ask as you're going in, right? Because again, most new developments have them, not all of them, but most of them do.
And I'm glad you asked, because we probably won't talk about that specifically during the showing process, but that should be presented to you when you're working with your agent. They should be telling you, before you even see the home, they should be presenting you some information. We'll talk more about it. But is there a MUD? Is there a PID? Is there an HOA? Additional fees that you should be aware of as you're looking at the home, because it would become then more just than your property taxes and your mortgage. You have other things you'd have to pay.
Yeah. You have folks that are looking at a condo, right? One of the things, if you're looking at a condo's a great option. Find out what the HOA dues are monthly. They could be $500, $600, $700, $800 a month. And townhome, same thing, right? There's some advantages, right? I mean, but there's some other things you want to make sure you're cognizant of as well, for sure. Okay. You want to flip that? Okay. So the next thing, and we get this question a lot. So interest rates today. Now, I gave you an interest rate on down payment assistance. I think Bruce had alluded to most of the time to get that free money. The trade-off is your interest rate's going to be slightly higher than what the interest rate market is, right? That's how they make their money, right? The difference between the spread, right? So if the interest rate's 6, you get 6.75. Well, they make that spread, and that's how you get $19,000 to buy that home. It's a great option if that's your only avenue to get in there. And we're going to look at down payment assistance as our first option, but then we're also going to look at, not having down payment assistance as well, which gives you a slightly lower monthly mortgage payment, but more out of pocket as well. So the next thing here is the cost of waiting. So interest rates right now, best interest rates we've seen in 3 years, right? They got as high as 8% on interest rates. We're around 6% right now. That's a huge difference. If you look at it historically over the last 50 years, the average interest rate is over 7, right? So we're not in a bad spot from an interest rate perspective. There was a time frame before most of you all were born, not you, Bruce. But in 1971, which was, and I was 6 years old. If I was with somebody and said, you know what, I'm not going to buy a house until interest rates drop below 7%. So in 1971, interest rates went above 7%. And I've said, you know what, line in the sand, I'm not buying a house until they drop below 7%. What year do you think they bought a house? 1993. Great. They waited 22 years for interest rates. Yeah, there were a lot of things going on, like there is now, but 22 years interest rates stayed above 7%. So even though 6% is not what it was during COVID, right? We saw rates that we'll never see again. There were a lot of reasons, quantitative easing, obviously COVID, a lot of things that, caused a lot of things. Bruce, they talked about price escalation and the fact that, it was almost impossible to buy a house, right? There were 10 people waiting for that door to open to get in to see that house. And that's not the case now. Interest rates are at a good spot relative to even where they were 2 or 3 years ago. So this is all about the cost of waiting. The question is, well, Darren, are interest rates going to get lower? And I think over time, we'll get gradually lower, right? And so I would project, and so if I'm looking at what the experts are saying, what the economists are saying, what the Federal Reserve is saying, I think it's possible we move from 6% where we're at now, right? A good interest rate over the next year or 2 or 3 to where we're somewhere in the low 5s. So that's positive. Is it significant? Not really. If you think about what is going to happen to home values as more people enter the market, right? So this slide that you should have in front of me, again, we used a $400,000 home price, a 3% down payment, which if you're a first-time home buyer on a conventional loan, you could put as little as 3% down for the down payment. And we looked at 2026 versus 2029. Interest rates today, 6%. Let's say in 2029, they're 5.25, right? So they dropped 0.75%. Home price today, $400,000. We're assuming 2.5% annual appreciation. That's a little lower than the historical average of 3 to 4%. So we're being conservative there. So that $400,000 home, if I bought it in 2029, is now $431,000. The loan amount, again, I'm putting 3% down. So now I've got to borrow more money because of the price of that home is more. My monthly payment, basically the same. All right. So I waited 3 years to buy a house. My monthly principal and interest payment was $23.25 if I bought it today. 2029 is $23.12. So even though I've got a better interest rate, I paid more for that house, right? So that's a cost of waiting. I didn't gain anything by waiting till 2029.
Say,
Yeah,
now you have $31,000 of equity in your home that you wouldn't have had.
great point, right? Just add a 2.5% appreciation. So I don't know what you all pay for rent, but let's say you pay $2,000 a month for rent, 36 months. You just paid $72,000 to pay somebody else's mortgage that you could have been paying back to yourself. So
Just breathe, Eli,
it's,
just breathe.
it's powerful, right? So, I mean, if you have the ability, again, it's wealth, it's family wealth, it's generational wealth. The process, we make it easy. Again, you may not be able to do it today, but you might be able to do it today. And if you're not able to do it today, we will get you on a path, and we don't charge you anything for this. This is all about like just, we believe everybody should own a home. And how can we help you get in that house?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Not so much a question, but maybe just kind of talk about, so my house, every month, I would pay a little bit extra on my mortgage.
Yeah.
And it helped me pay off my mortgage 12 years early. So can you maybe just talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anytime you have a little bit of extra money, put that towards your mortgage, and that's just principal being like.
Absolutely. I think two things with that. One, this first home that you're buying won't be your last home.
Mm.
Right? We're not our parents' generation where it was very common to buy a house and you lived in that your entire life. We're very much transition, we're job portability, right? I mean, there's a multitude of reasons, but think of that first home that you're buying as just that. It's a way to start building equity. More than likely for 99% of us, it's not going to be the last home that you own, but now you've got that equity to put towards a larger down payment on a nicer home, in the future. One way to do that is, it's going to be amortized over 30 years. So if I look at, there's something on a loan estimate that comes out during the loan process, and it shows you if that interest rate's 6% over 30 years and you make all the payments on an amortization schedule from payment 1 to payment 360, on that $400,000 loan, you paid $995,000, right? It's something staggering. One way to prevent that is to make additional principal only payments. And maybe that's $100 a month. Maybe it's one principal payment every year. There's lots of great calculators out there where even though that term is 30 years, you can shorten that to 20. You can shorten that to 15. Every additional principal only payment you make just means you have more equity in that home. So when you go to sell it, now you've got a significantly larger down payment. So it's a great point. There's no cost. There's no fees. You can always make additional payments whenever you want to make them. And again, there's some great calculators out there that show you, here's how much I'd have to make additional payments, whether it's monthly or annually, to take a 30-year term and turn it into 15.
Oh,
I was gonna ask, so if you were to go and say
Mhm.
decide to try and pay it off.
Yeah.
Is there so what would be the point of doing that first?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a 15-year term is going to have a slightly better interest rate than a 30. Here's why I try to tell folks not to do it. Let's say you have household income, you have two people with household income. What happens if that one of those two goes away? That mortgage payment doesn't change, right? So you're locked into a higher payment. Are there advantages to a 15-year? Absolutely. You just have to be careful because that payment's almost double what it is on a 30-year term. So if heaven forbid something happens to household income, do you have the ability to make that mortgage payment?
would it be better in that case, I guess, to wiser to do, or was it wiser to just refinance?
I believe that a 30-year term, if it was a difference between, let's say, if the interest rate on a 30-year was 6% and I could get 3.5% on a 15-year, I'd have to give it serious consideration. But honestly, the difference is less than 0.5% on the interest rate. So there's not a lot of financial incentive from an interest rate perspective to do that, right? So, my feeling is don't lock yourself into that payment that's almost double what it would be over 30 years, but still pay it off in 15 if you have that ability. Yep.
Any other question?
Yes, ma'am.
Good.
Different scenario. Let's say either you're looking for a house.
Yeah.
So what happens when you're talking about a roadmap? How does that change with lenders giving you money? Like how long? before they'll look at it?
It's a great question. So we're looking from a guideline, from the government's guideline perspective, right? We're looking at it so there's not going to be an absolute answer for you because it depends on the situation. But generally speaking, if I've got a 2-year work history, and let's say I lose my job today, in a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, I start back at my job. Well, I've still got a 2-year work history, right? But I'm going to have to reestablish myself from an employment perspective. Now, if I'm salaried, right? If I come in and I'm a salaried employee, well, I can define your income day one or before you've ever started the job. If you're hourly, that's variable income, and it's not the same answer. You're going to have to establish that variable income over a 6-month period of time. But
It's not-
if I'm,
Establish it again, salary job.
you're good to go. I've had folks that have been unemployed, got a 2-year work history, right? I'm just unemployed right now. I get a job offer and it's salaried at 60,000 a year, and I'm going to start 3 weeks from now. You could buy a home today based on that offer letter at that salary. I mean, it really doesn't, it doesn't change change the qualification process. I mean, as a general rule of thumb, I like to say, if you're going to buy a house, try to have a 6-month nest egg, right? Because you never know what could happen, right? So, I mean, just as a general, house-wise, not house-wise, 6-month nest egg, just a rainy day fund, yeah. So, but it doesn't affect your down payment as far as that situation, no.
Wasn't there some-
Oh, yeah. Student loans, don't pay them off. It has very little impact when it comes now. 99 times out of 100, that student loan isn't necessarily going to impact your ability to purchase a home, right? So depending upon, I would look at it, so before I got into the mortgage business, I was a financial planner for all my life. I would look at from a financial planning perspective, what's the interest rate on that student loan? If it's 7, 6, 8, 9, and I got a credit card at 29, I know where I'm focusing. It's not the student loan, it's the credit card. So, I mean, and that's kind of what we do during the process. I'm looking at it to get you pre-approved to purchase a house, but I'm also looking out for your best interest as well, right? So I'll have folks that want to put 20% down, but they're sitting on $30,000 in credit card debt. How about we put 10% down, pay off that credit card debt, stuff like that.
For the sake of time, we're gonna keep moving, but that's part of why we have him here. He's gonna stick around until the end, just because I want to make sure we get through it. But the point is, Darren is only a phone call away. He'll still be here. So if you have questions, so please write it down. But part of thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Part of what I wanted us to get from this is real world applications, where he showed us this cost sheet that shows us, because I think a part of what we do is we hear just kind of, I don't know whether it's from our parents or I don't know where it comes from, but that we need $30,000 or whatever, $25,000, 20%, 30%, whatever, to get a home. And that's clearly just not the case. So I want us to see a real world application, because Bruce, I think we were just talking the other day that with down payment assistance and these other programs help somebody, first time home buyer, I believe, get into a home for $4,700. I've helped a client get into a home for $5,500. And the point being, there, like Darren said, there are some things that go into it, but you don't know until you ask. And so I think the second step we go through is we hear about these programs from like Instagram and TikTok, but like have no idea how it actually applies to us. And so Darren's got his cards, they should be in there. It's just a phone call away, and I know he's happy to talk with you about it. But can we give Darren a round of applause? Thank you so much for explaining that to us. So, and the next part would just be searching for homes. So after you sat down with an agent, you said, here's what I'm looking for. And then you've gotten pre-approved. So you kind of have a firm idea, okay, here's my price range, here's my budget. Now you go into the actual home searching process, which is the fun part. How many of us have already spent time looking at Zillow or Redfin, or even just, we follow some accounts on Instagram and they're always showing us homes? Yeah. So now this is mine. I'll get some more content. We're actually walking through homes. So maybe I'll take you. Yeah, so now is the actual search process. And Susan, we talked to us a little bit about Zillow versus what we do.
Right. So, before you meet with an agent, you've probably, like we've talked about, get on Zillow, you you're looking everywhere. We caution people to looking online like that because they're not updated. We use something called the multiple listing service, and that's where every agent posts their homes. So that is going to be the real actual what is actually happening. Things on Zillow could be a couple weeks behind, couple days behind, whatever. It's not always going to be, you could send me a house and I can say, oh yeah, that I can look it up on MLS and that house has been gone. It's sold, whatever. Or a lot of people look on Facebook even. And that's a big trap.
Facebook Marketplace is not the best place to find a home.
That's gonna be a scam most of the time. So if you see something on Facebook, let us know and we can check it out for you. But so what we're gonna do is after we've had our conversations with you, we are going to set you up on a portal that is going to send you homes based on what we've talked about. Your square footage, your bedroom size, where you want to be, schools, whatever your important criteria is, we're going to have this portal is going to send you updates. We can send it daily, weekly, monthly, whatever works for you. You're still going to look online. If you see something online, send it to us. If it's not in your portal, we'll check it out and we will add that to your list if that's something that you want to see. But go ahead.
Absolutely. And when you see something, the next step is you just let us know. We're also looking through it. And so the next step is you let us know. And part of it is we look at hundreds, we've seen thousands of homes. And so we know that, people often take pictures that look better than the home actually is. And so part of our job is to, before we actually go see the home, do some research, call the agent, find out what we can about the home, look at the home from an aerial view. A lot of times I get a client to send me a picture of a home or I want to go see this one. And then we look and there's a giant power line running right next to the home. And they're like, maybe we
away from the highway.
Block away from the highway, or the dump is right over here and it's got a smell in the area. So just things like that we look at before we actually see the home. And then when we actually go through the showing process, when we're actually in the home looking for things. I'm not an inspector. That's why we have an inspector here with us. But what I will look for is there are a bunch of cracks in different areas that tell us that it might have foundation issues. If you do still like the home, that's why we're going to have Chris come out and say, hey, he's going to do it anyway. But we were going to pay special attention to that area. Or other little signs that just say this home might have other issues. Is there a bunch of water damage underneath the sinks? Maybe they have leaky pipes. Things that could cost you a lot of money if you actually move forward with the home. You want to find out before you actually close on it.
And like I said, we call the agent and we have a conversation with that agent before we even take you to see that house, because they're going to tell us things that aren't even on MLS, that they're going to tell us maybe the motivation. We're going to find out if they've had offers on the house already. And if they fell through, why. We're just going to do extra investigation about that specific home before we take you to see it. And we may decide to let you know some of these things before we even go see it, to say, you probably don't want to see this house. So that's why you hire us. That's why you talk to us. And I promise you, you're going to walk into a house and say, boy, those pictures did lie. Just expect that. That's not going to say that every house, the pictures are beautiful and the house isn't, because there are beautiful houses out there. So, you're going to find a house that's perfect for you.
Or vice versa. The pictures look good. And sometimes people go in, oh man, this house is beautiful. And then when you have an experienced agent, they're like, yeah, well, I'm starting to see some things that looks like people are trying to cover up a real issue. Let's get Chris involved.
Right. Okay, so after we found the homes that found a home that you like, and we're ready to discuss making an offer. The first thing I'm going to do, and sometimes I do this if I feel like it's a serious home for you anyway, is I pull the comps. And I don't know if I gave you a sheet of the comps, but
there's a slide for it.
There's a slide. So I'm going to pull the comparable houses in that neighborhood, in that area. I'm looking at square footage. I'm looking at bedrooms. I'm looking at proximity to that subject house. So in this case, the green line is our subject house. That's the house that you are interested in making an offer on. And the first section are all the other houses in the neighborhood or in that area that are for sale. So those are your competition, basically. That is what else is on the market that other people are looking at in addition to this house. The second section are the houses that have sold. And that is going to be where you get your true market value of where that house should be, where the subject house you're looking at, where a good offer would be for that house. That makes sense. So again, I'm looking at square footage. I'm looking at condition of the house. Has that house been updated? Does it compare to the houses that were sold? So that's where I'm trying to pull the best options. And I generally go back 6 months, houses that were sold for 6 months or sooner. And sometimes seasonality plays into that as well. So you kind of have to make, estimates here and there, but you pull the best options you can. And then we will discuss based on the numbers that we found, the condition of the house, motivation of the seller. Sometimes the seller is just like, I got to get this house sold. And sometimes the agent has told me that. So that also helps us determine a good offer for this house. Are we going to get concessions on this house? There's just so many things that we talk about. How fast can you close? Have you gone through lending through the whole lending process? Are you approved? Basically, you're ready. Darren's just waiting on a house so he can finalize the numbers. Yeah.
So with the MLS, do you all have access to like the database by owner? Open Door House, and that Jennifer helped me get, who was my realtor at the time. And so do y'all have the same access? Because I don't really know how that should.
Yeah, so Open Door is on MLS. So we will see Open Door homes, we'll see Orchard, we'll see Redfin, we'll see all of those homes as well. They are listed on MLS. An off-market or a pocket listing do not go on MLS, but we, our office and just a handful of other offices in the Metroplex we pay for a service. It's called Final Offer. And it's a service that we provide to our clients, and it gives us off-market properties. So if someone lists an off-market property or lists a property as an off-market or a pocket, we will have that on Final Offer. So
It's because at one point and they send out realtors that, no offense, aren't great at all. And
No.
it got very confusing. And so I made sure that my realtor from the beginning got the sale, but I didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted to see the house.
sure.
And so do you all have an exclusivity sort of?
So when you choose us as your agent, we have you sign what's called a buyer rep agreement. And that is where we are now a fiduciary to you. So we represent you, and you're our client. We don't share your information with anyone else. We don't talk about what we've talked about. What we talk about is confidential. And our duty is to provide you the best service we can for you. And then in turn, you give us your business, and we show you the houses that you select. So that's really the best way, because if you're just working with somebody on Redfin or Open Door or whatever, they're really just opening doors for you.
Mhm.
And they don't have any loyalty to you whatsoever.
Is it true that if I don't sign a buyer's rep agreement, you work for the seller?
I was just gonna say that.
Yes. So yes.
Technically, our fiduciary responsibility at that point then becomes to the seller. If we don't have an agreement between whoever the potential buyer, whoever we're showing a home, then technically our responsibility is to the seller, usually like as a sub agent. Which means they probably have their own agent, and then are responsible to that other selling party. We're still not your agent, so we're not their main agent, but just like our fiduciary responsibility is still to that other side.
Yeah. Our loyalty is to you, and we want to do everything we can to make the process and the purchase work for you. Likewise, the seller's agent has that same same fiduciary duty to their seller. So that's why, you know, we work together. We are licensed. We are the experts, and we work together to try and give the best scenario to both of our clients. But when you sign,
Because I already had a realtor, but I was excited. And you know, I was a part of the market where they were offering 10 offers
yeah,
in a day. So I was like, okay.
yeah,
I
I got to get in this house right now. I
Yeah.
can't wait on my agent. Yeah, yeah.
And to your point, this, I think, Bruce, it's the bane of your existence is that we see a Redfin agent comes in and opens the door and then just stands there and they're just kind of on their phone and they let their person walk through. Like, okay, you're done. Okay. And then they walk out and lock up. They're not walking you through the home and looking
Nothing
at
about
things.
that house. They have not done any investigation on it. They know nothing about it. So that's why you hire us, because before we even take you to that house, we're going to know the most we can about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's where we are. We've determined what you want to offer on this house. We've talked about terms. When do you want to close? We've discussed your down payment. We've discussed all the financial parts of this contract.
So everybody besides Paige, because being an attorney, is probably a little overwhelmed by looking at this. This is what contracts and forms look like. She probably loves it. But that's exactly everybody else.
There's
Oh, yes.
11 pages to
Yes.
the offer.
And so that's part of why we're here, to
Yeah.
talk you through it, to walk you through it, to make it make sense.
A lot of it won't even apply to your scenario. There's just a lot of stuff in this that doesn't even apply to what you're gonna make the offer on. So that's what we're gonna walk through this with you. We're gonna talk about your down payment, your earnest money, your option period, the closing dates. We'll walk through all of this with you and help you determine the best offer to make on a home.
Absolutely.
Should I go into option and?
For the sake of time, we probably.
Okay. All right. So we have submitted an offer. We determined a price and submitted an offer. Now the seller's agent has that and they're talking with their seller about it. And this is when negotiations come in and.
Yeah, the purchase price is just one point of the actual negotiation. This is where seller concessions come in. And so you would talk and maybe get an idea of what you would get for, you know, down payment assistance and things like that. But as far as seller concessions, that's something that your agent negotiates with the other side. And so part of our job and one of our values is a win-win. So a win for our clients, but then also making sure that it makes sense for both parties. And that's how you get a good deal done. So they feel like they're walking away with something, but really our job is to make sure that you guys are getting a deal. So that's where we would negotiate seller concessions to help with closing costs, timelines. If you guys are on a quick timeline, or maybe the other person is on a quick timeline, and that gives us an advantage. Maybe they have a job in Oklahoma City and they need to be out quick. And so that gives us more leverage to negotiate that point as well. Or appliances, if they've got some great appliances and they're moving and they don't want them, we can negotiate that into the contract, because usually the home doesn't come with a fridge, washer and dryer, things. That's an additional cost for you guys. But really all of this goes to say that a well-priced offer is just one component of an overall well-structured offer.
So now we've come to an agreement and you are technically under contract with this house. The seller and the buyer have agreed on terms, and we are now moving into the due diligence period, which is this is a very busy period.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on at this time. So the very first thing that happens is you have 3 days to submit your earnest money and your option fee. Your earnest money is your deposit. It's your good faith saying, I'm purchasing this house. And it's typically 1% of the sale price. So on a $400,000 house, your earnest money would be $4,000. And then you also have what's called an option fee. And that is your money to the seller to say, I'm going to take a look at this house. I'm giving you this money. So you will hold this house. You will take this house off the market for the option period and let me do what I need to do to determine whether I'm going to move forward and purchase this house. And that is somewhere between 5 and 7 days. We'd love to have 7 days every time, but sometimes they won't give that to us. And it's about $300, $350. That's negotiable. That money you won't get back. If you decide not to purchase this house, that is your money to the seller to say, thank you for pulling this house off the market while I do what I need to do to determine I'm going to move forward with this house. If in that option period, the 5 to 7 days, you decide you don't want to buy that house, you do get that earnest money back, that 1%. So you'll get that $4,000 back. But the option money they keep. During this time, you're going to hire an inspector and you're going to do your insurance. And I'm going to let Chris go first
Yeah.
since he's got, so we'll come back to Levi in just a second, but so Chris Harwood is an inspector and you're going to hire him the very first day and he's pretty good about coming up pretty quickly. And he is going to talk about what he does.
Hi, everybody. If you can't tell with the purple and gold, I'm an LSU guy. So if you ever,
You got some fans.
my sister went to Alabama, so we send hateful messages to each other once a year. So like Susan said, you found a house, you love the house, you negotiate a price, you're under contract. The first thing you want to do is call me. Because once you're under contract, the clock is ticking. Back in the day, 7 days was the standard. Now 5 days is more typical. During COVID, when everything was crazy, it was 3 days. Sometimes it was terrible. So now it's time for your inspection. How do you book it? It's really simple. You call me, text me, email me, or go on my website, and there's a big blue book now button. Put your information in, and I get a ding, and you're booked whenever you want. All the information I need is your full name, your email, and the address of the property, and who your agent is. That's it. That's all I need, and I take it from there. I book the inspection around your schedule. I want you guys to come at the end of the inspection to go over the report in person. 95% of my clients attend the inspection. That way, if with us, usually most of my agents come to the inspection as well, because that's a very important step. So I have a showing service. There's showing time and broker bay. So I schedule the inspection through the listing agent. You don't have to worry about that at all. I get to the property. I let myself in. I usually spend 2 to 3 hours. I inspect the roof, the insulation, the attic, all the major components of your home. I compile it into a report with like 1 million pictures, 1 million videos. Yeah, there's some examples up there. And then when I compile the entire report, we're going to go over the major things that are going to cost you a lot of money, or things that could potentially be a safety issue. People don't really think about that kind of thing, but back in the 70s, they built these electrical panels that have been all recalled because they literally burn people's houses down. And I still find them all the time. And so that's one of those things. It's like, you don't want to move your family into this house and it could potentially be dangerous. So once we go over the report, the next step is you're going to get with your agent and be like, okay, do we want them to fix A, B, or C? Or do we want to give us a credit at closing and then we'll fix it ourselves? Does that make sense? Okay. And it's really that simple. What I always recommend is like the big ticket items are going to be roofs, foundations, electrical, HVAC, and really the biggest one is plumbing. People just, when it comes to plumbing, people are like, oh, I flush the toilet, it goes away, it's magic. Or, I take a shower and it drains, it just goes away. My house is built in the 1950s. I had all cast iron plumbing under my house, and it lasted 72 years. It was designed originally to last 30 to 40 years. Mine lasted 72 years. When it went, it went. And so I had to have a plumber come out, and he did everything under my house. They dug this giant hole and replaced everything with PVC. And then he tied it into the line going to the street. And I was like, how long is that going to last? And he was like, well, we'll just kind of see. 2 weeks later, they had to come dig out my entire front yard all the way to the street. And that old pipe was, they called it Orangeburg. It was a mixture of asbestos and wood pulp. And they were out there hammering away on it with a hammer and no mask on. I was like watching them. I was like, I'm going to wait inside while y'all do that. So yeah, I saw there was one question over here. Yeah, and that's all part of the negotiation.
Yeah.
So like, let's say if I find an electrical panel that I'm like, you need to replace this, you're going to you'll probably have an electrician come out, look at it, give you a price. So for example, like with Bruce recently, we did a house that was early 80s, And I was like, we really want to have a plumber meet me there, do the camera line under the house. And they did. And it was a huge number to replace it all.
And usually, because during the option period, once we get the inspection back from Chris, we'll go through and kind of see, okay, what's on here. Usually if it's something we know the cost of, like, okay, the dishwasher doesn't work. We know a dishwasher can cost, you know, you source one at Lowe's, it's $600, whatever. Okay, we know how much that costs. If it's a major system, that it could cost $5,000, but maybe we find more and it's $10,000. A lot of times that's something that we want to try and have negotiate the seller to fix. Because we don't want to say, okay, this is going to cost you guys $5,000, and then when they actually, let's say it's, you know, plumbing, and they actually peel things back, and it's like, oh, this is actually all of a sudden a $10,000 fix, and
Just have them fix it, because then it'll be on them.
exactly.
Yes.
Two-part kind of question. Are there levels of inspection that people pay for, like, or is it just a set flat rate? And then with that, is there any, I wouldn't say guarantee or warranty, but in the sense of like, if I have you come inspect a whole home and then you just somehow didn't look at the entire electrical panel, like, do I have anything on my end at the end of it be like, what, like, how did you, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So I'm not the best way to answer that question. If I make a mistake, then I have to pay for it. So I am extremely thorough, and every home I do, I've done $5 million homes and I've done 500 square foot apartments. It sounds silly, but they're all the same. So I do this, I do the roof, then I do the attic, then I do this, then I do this, then I do this. Does that make sense? Sure.
So real estate agents are licensed by the Texas Real Estate Commission, TREC. So are inspectors. And they're obligated, they have a process that they go through. First of all, they have training. There's reoccurring training, and they have a process that they go through to do the inspection. They're obligated to identify things to you. It's up to you and your agent to decide whether or not you want to ask for that to be repaired. But it is a real process, and it's regulated and governed by TREC.
Yeah, and in Texas, there are certain states where we are not regulated at all. Like in Colorado, you could walk into Colorado and be like, I'm a home inspector, and try to do inspections and have no idea what you're doing. Yeah. So in Texas, I had to do 330 hours of training, and then it was like 2 weeks in the field, and that was 10 years ago. And then I remember the licensing exam I took. I have a degree from LSU, and that licensing exam was the most difficult test I've ever taken in my entire life. I think only about 55% of inspectors pass it the first time. And I mean, they make you have to go get fingerprinted. It's a whole thing. So.
And Chris is very thorough. Like this is an example of what is actually like a 20 to 30 page report, and they're making note of everything. And so
You have like, okay, these are the things that I inspect. And so if there's a one-off, you know, that's not what he inspects. You need to hire the specialist to come and do that.
And then the form itself is this form that comes from the state of Texas. So every inspector has to use this exact same form.
I think we had a couple questions.
Yeah.
Then like if it is credited and then
So it's actually really rare that I do that because I don't want to charge you. But also like if they say they fix it and they didn't, that's almost considered fraud.
You can
So,
sue them.
yeah.
To give you all the receipts and, you know, the scope of work that was done to repair that. And you now have those, and if there is an issue, you'll go back to that vendor. Like if it was the plumbing or something like that.
And once
Yeah.
Yes.
can't just be.
I think we have one more question back there.
Now, say if you're doing an inspection and then you bring us back what you found and it's the cost is astronomical, like we're not necessarily that interested anymore. What happens then? If you're under contract, are you bound to continue the process?
So, and that's why it's so important to get your inspector out there quickly, because you're during your option period. And so Yep. And so that's where it's like you probably spent maybe $200, $300 for the option period. The earnest money on the $400,000 house example is $4,000. But you're going to get that $4,000 back. The only thing it cost you was the cost of the inspection, and then your option money, and then you walk away. And that does happen. Absolutely.
That deadline is, then forward.
And so as agents, that's why, okay, we're under option. We want our inspector out there within the first 48 hours so that we can go over it day 3 and have a decision probably day 3 or 4.
That's why, I mean, it's all part of the negotiation of how long the option period is going to be, you know.
And something I tell all my buyers, there's no such thing as a perfect home. They don't exist. I do new builds all the time. You'd be shocked at what I find in new builds, like all the time. My house was built in 1952. If I did a home inspection on my own home, it would probably be 75 pages long, just because that's just how they were built back then. I mean, I still have the little 2-prong outlets in my house, and it's fine. I go to Home Depot and buy the little adapters and plug the stuff into it. It works just fine.
And your inspector will make notes of what's actually an issue versus what's just, hey, this might need like an outlet cover or whatever outside or something like that. Or is it tore up from the floor up, run away?
and they change the codes for new builds all the time. So like one of the most recent changes is all your electrical outlets in new houses have to be those tamper resistant ones. Those are the really annoying ones that you have to plug the things into. And that's just a new thing. But, you know, so if a home was 5 years old, it doesn't have that. But according to modern day standards, it's supposed to.
Know that, but that doesn't mean
you got to go switch them all out. Yeah.
Do warranties transfer?
Yes. So we have, so let's say the house has had foundation work done. You'll get a lifetime warranty. The homeowner will have had a lifetime warranty on that foundation work. That warranty will transfer over to the new buyer, but it's only on that work that was done. Let's say there were 10 piers put in the house, in a foundation. Only those 10 piers will be warranted and transferred over. If something else has come up with the other part of the house, that's going to be something you're going to have to deal with. We do live in North Texas, and soils around here shift all the time. How many houses do you go in that don't have foundation issues or have not had foundation work?
So my foundation guy told me that North Texas is one of the worst places in the entire country for foundations. So it's not a matter of if a house is going to need foundation work at some point, it's when. And especially like, you know, all these new builds that they're building out in the country. I mean, this is all farmland that had been tilled for 100 years, and now they're building entire communities on top of this land. So, you know, and like I said, it's something anything can be fixed. It's just a matter of how much it's going to cost. And, you know, like, especially in like Lake Highlands, all those homes were built in the 1970s and they're all slab foundations. Almost every single one of those needs some kind of work at some point. All right. Any other questions?
Just a quick one. What's the craziest thing you've seen during an inspection?
There's just so many. Okay. So recently I did this house in Anna, and it was like every home in Anna's typical, you know, 2,000 square foot ranch style home. The thing was, it was vacant. And they were like, okay, so it's vacant. You know, those are the easiest ones to do. There's no furniture to move, no pets. You know, the sellers don't have to leave. So I go to this house, I go inside, flip on all the lights, get the water going, get the air conditioner going. I go do the outside first. That's just my process. And then so I'm at this house for almost an hour, and I forgot. I was like, oh, I haven't been in the garage yet. So I open the door to the garage, and there's a car. And it was really dark in there. So, because I'd been outside, and so it was really, I was kind of staring at this car for a minute. And then I realized that there's a person in the car, and he sloped over like this. And so I'm just standing there like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, I found a lot of weird stuff at homes. I've never found a dead body before. And so finally I'm like, okay. And I turn the light on, and the dude wakes up. And like, I mean, I almost jumped 10 feet in the air. I was so scared. And he was the seller, and he was sleeping in his car in the garage at this vacant house. And then he got mad at me for waking him up. He's like, why'd you turn the light on? I'm like, why are you here? Like, because the sellers aren't supposed to be there. And it was just such a bizarre moment. Like, I was like, why are you here? And why are you mad at me? Like, can you? And so finally he got in his car and drove away. I was like, why are you sleeping in your car?
At least he was alive.
I mean, at least he was alive, you know, so yeah. But yeah, any other questions?
It's probably gonna, the answer's probably gonna be no, but, like, say there's houses been sold many times, like, are these inspection reports like made public anywhere?
No, they belong to you. And honestly, most of this, like, you don't want to send it to the seller because then they have to disclose every single little thing I found, and they don't like that. So I work for you. I don't work for the agents. I don't work for the insurance companies. I don't work for the mortgages. I work for you. And once the report is done, I send it to you, and then you can do whatever you want with it. And a lot of people ask me, I'll go real quick. Should I get a new home inspected? Because, contractors, they never make mistakes. Oh, yes, they do. Yeah, I've seen crazy stuff at new builds. I've even seen pictures where someone had stuffed a water bottle down the main sewer line so that all the plumbing backed up, just out of spite. I've seen personally where they will eat their lunch, like eat McDonald's, and then they'll put the bag of food in the framing and then put the drywall over it. I don't know why, but it happens all the time. Or bottles of beer, all sorts of crap stuff. So yes, you do want to have a new build inspected. And then let's say, like I have a friend who's building a house out in Josephine, Texas. And so I do what's called a phase inspection. So before they even pour the concrete for the slab, I go out, I measure how deep the footings are, I look at all the plumbing. And then when they pour the slab and put up all the framing, I go look before they hang the drywall so I can see all the electrical, all the plumbing, everything. And then I do a final when it's completed. And then I do what's called an 11th month, which is your warranty is usually good for about a year. So I go back out again and do, has anything broken? Is everything still good? And then that way you can submit any repairs to the builder before your warranty expires. All right. Any other questions?
I think that's it.
All right.
Thank you so much, Chris.
So then at the same time you're having the inspection done, the best thing to do is to talk to an insurance agent, because if for some reason the house is going to have trouble getting insured, you want to know that during the option period. And this is Levi, and he's our insurance partner, and he's going to go over some of that.
How are y'all? Good to be here. I'll start with this. I had the pleasure of knowing the Wapple team and the Levels for a long time now. So I'm really thank y'all for letting me be here. And we're really good friends. They're really great people. So I'm excited to be here. I'll try to be brief. We could go into the weeds on a lot of stuff on this. I'll start with a little bit of just my process specifically, and then just some things about insurance high level, and then whatever questions y'all have. But for my process, it's on the next slide here in a minute, or actually it's right here. Ideally, no, you're good. Yeah, on that first slide. Ideally, we're getting connected at least 30 days out, from close date. I love to talk to people. If I get connected to you before you're under contract, that's even great for me sometimes, because I like to give people an idea of what the insurance might cost. Or I can run what's called a clue report. Audra always sends me addresses that they're looking at some of their clients closing on. I can run a report that shows claims from the current owner for the last 7 years, and that can uncover some things that you might want to know. Some important things like large, fire claims, large water claims, large wind and hail claims, all those kinds of things. Ideally, the sellers will let you know that on the disclosure, but they don't always. And so the clue report can show you some of those things, and it impacts pricing and eligibility. So ideally, we're talking at a minimum 30 days out. Is what I like to do. And again, even if you don't know if you're going to get that address you're looking at, by me, we can still go ahead and give you an idea of what it's going to be, so that you're confident about stepping into that, option period and everything else, like they just said. As far as my actual process, I can be as, quick as you want me to be, or we can take, as long as you want at the same time. But if we're in a perfect scenario and you've got the time during the day and you're not at, at work or wherever, or if we're in the evening talking, we can get on the phone and we can get something like this done in an hour or less. Sometimes I get on the phone with people and just spend, 10, 15 minutes getting to know them, get the address, just, talk it up a little bit, chat it up, get to know what's going on, and then we reconnect maybe the next day. But we can get it done in one phone call if that's what needs to happen. Just kind of depends on, what you got going on with your work schedule and where you're at, but I'm flexible on all those kinds of things. Some best practices, and I will say this, just talking about me, in general, she kind of mentioned it, but I work as a broker, so I'm non-captive. I own my agency, which is recent. I used to be a corporate employee for the brokerage I work at, but I just launched my own business this last week, actually. So I'm excited to say that. Thanks to my wonderful partners. Oh, my fault. Sorry about that. So yeah, so that's an exciting thing for me recently, but all I was going to say was we're a brokerage, so I'm able to look at over 30 providers in the state. And so that is a really big value add for you, because I'm not just pushing one individual product. I'm going to look at dozens and figure out, hey, best possible price, best possible coverage. Let's make it make sense for this specific house, because it's very different house to house. So yeah, we said 30 days out at least. One thing I'd love to say, kind of like y'all were saying earlier, same thing is, don't just go through Zillow or Redfin. Don't just trust a quote online. Talk to an actual agent. We have the expertise and to point you in some right directions on coverages. And quite frankly, online quotes are very rarely the exact price you're going to get. You're going to get a really low price. You call them back, it's going to raise. When you talk to me, I'm going to tell you the exact price it's going to be, and it's not going to change because I'm going to get all the accurate information up front is my goal. I don't like any surprises. I always say, be willing to consider bundling your home and auto. It's funny, but I'll talk to people and they'll, for whatever reason, they're just like, they're married to their current auto policy. And I'm like, that's fine, but you want to consider everything. And so I would always say to people, I say this every time, I'm not going to force anything. It needs to make sense financially for you and coverage. And so if it makes sense, great. If not, that's okay. But a lot of times bundling can be advantageous for premiums and eligibility, depending on the house. And then all the things that Chris just said, very applicable to the insurance, obviously. So finding out the age and condition of the roof, major home systems. Again, that can be found on the CLUE report as well as the inspection. Those, especially the roof, plays a major role in the premium in this area specifically. And then again, one of the main things I was saying as far as getting quotes from an actual person and not just online is there's some things about the way policies are written that you can quickly miss as far as water coverages go in the roof settlement type. Those are the really big issues right now. And that I see a lot is when I look at a quote of somebody that's got it online or they're just trying to compare, it's missing some key components that I would suggest that you would have. And then the roof settlement just means the difference between getting replacement cost on a claim or actual cash value, which you do not want if you can prevent it. So next slide, if you could. And I'll try to move quickly so y'all can ask questions. These are not an exhaustive list, but these are pretty much the main things I would say that are going to affect the rate and the eligibility of the home insurance premium. So age of the roof, size of the home, age of the home, location, and insurance score. Insurance score is made up of several things. It does have to do a little bit with credit, surprisingly, like your actual personal credit. And then your insurance credit, as in how your history with insurance companies in the past, how long have you been insured continuously? Have you had lapses in the past? Things like that on auto and home. And then the actual house itself you're looking at, how many claims does it have on it from previous owners? That even affects the new rate of the person buying, coming in. And also, if you've owned homes in the past, claims you've had on previous addresses also affect whatever home you're going to buy in the future. And so those all kind of tie into that fifth point there. I thought it'd be cool to show y'all, again, this is an average. So, it's not completely, to a specific, house or anything, but since we're in Allen, I ran some numbers this past week on the two, main zip codes, obviously in Allen. And this is an average premium. This is annual. Home insurance is always annual of what it costs right now in this area, trailing 90 days. And these are from some of my top, 6 carriers that I typically sell. Obviously, this is not the only list of carriers that I sell, but these are some of the main players right now in this area. So if this gives you a good idea, so that's anywhere, if you're thinking a monthly perspective, that's anywhere from, as low as maybe potentially 330-ish to as high as, 375, 400 a month for home insurance in this area. 90-day average of annual premiums in these zip codes, if that makes sense. But I will say, this is an average, right? So it's not, if you're buying a brand new house, less than 2,000 a year, almost guaranteed every single time for home insurance. A new build, if it's a really small house, I've insured things for as low as $1,000 on the year. If it's a really small, 1,200 square feet house. But if you're, buying a $2,000 or 2,000 square feet house, you're probably looking at as low as, 1,600 a year to 2,000 a year in premium. The homes are 5, 10, 15, 20 years old with, 5 to 7 plus, age on the roof. That's when you start getting into, 3,500 to 4,000 plus on premium, if that makes sense. So I thought that'd be helpful to see those numbers there. And then really the main thing I wanted to point out on this slide is just the best way to think about it. If you're on the phone with me, we're going to, once I find my best option for you, what I'm presenting is my best option, I'm going to go through line by line and tell you exactly what every coverage set means and what you're not covered for as well. And that's the main thing I wanted to point out is the majority of policies I'm writing are what's called the HO3 policy, which is the best kind of policy you can have for just a typical single family house. And what it means is an open peril policy, which means you're covered for everything that would happen to the house except for the exclusions. And these are universal for all carriers. And so some of them are kind of silly, right? Like nuclear and, war and all those kinds of things. But some people don't know that, pest and infestation or wear and tear, like some of those things, that's not even listed, pest and infestation on this slide. But some things that you might think you're covered for, I want to let you know up front that you're not. And we're going to go through, obviously, the main things that you are covered for. Flood is one, too, that people don't realize, oh, that just comes with my home policy. It doesn't. It's a separate policy. And that's not to say water damage. We're talking about flood, which is an actual like flood on the outside of the house, rising water come up into the house. If we're talking about bursted pipes, leaks, sewer water, all those things are covered on the policies I'm going to write. But yeah, I just wanted y'all to see that it's the best way to think about it. Can be confusing is what are the things I'm not covered for? And I like to show this list, and everything else you are on the HO3 policies. If that, helps you kind of see a little bit. And then what's the next slide here? Yeah, so just breaking it down just a little bit. This is what on an HO3 policy comes with every carrier in the state. This is what you're going to get no matter what. You've got your coverage A, B, C, D, E, and F. And so coverage A is your dwelling amount. This is the rebuild amount of the home if it were to burn down, tornado were to take it out, total loss. This would be the amount that the insurance company would pay up to. So I say the rebuild amount because it's not the market value amount. I can, I'll insure a house for whatever, the client wants me to insure it for, but, it doesn't always line up with what the purchase price is because purchase price can include land value and market value. You don't want it to be too far of a gap, but you don't want to insure a house for, $700,000 just because that's what you're buying it for. If it only costs, $575,000, $600,000 to rebuild it. And I can prove that with the software that all the insurance companies run to, determine the coverage amount. And all the policies that I write, for the most part, are going to include a 25% basically insurance for the insurance, so that if we write a policy for $400,000 in coverage, you're going to get an additional 25% inflation protection, just in case there's a cost of labor in that year that it increase, or a cost of goods has gone up, like the construction materials. I put that on there just in case you have an additional bucket of money to pull from if you needed it, and it's like less than $100 a premium on the year typically. So that's going to be on there. And then just, everything else from there, coverages B, C, and D, are a percentage of that amount. And so 10% goes towards other structures, 50% goes towards your belongings on the inside of the home. And then coverage D is loss of use. So if you're displaced from the home from a loss, whether it's total, whether it's just, you got to move out because they've got to fix the floor for a few weeks, you can use a percentage of your dwelling to put you up in a Airbnb, hotel, rent house, something like that. So it's typically 20% of, let's say, $400,000 if that's the coverage amount. So you can use that, you can expense it. It's like, you just have to go buy a hotel room, and then you expense it back to the insurance company, is how that would work. And there's more that we would go through on each of these, like caveats. I always explain things, in detail. I'm just hitting high level with y'all right now. But so those are the main bulk of the coverages. And then you've got your liability and your medical payments. So that's just your protection as the homeowner to say that, hey, if somebody gets injured at the house, for you as being the owner, whether it's a contractor and they don't have insurance for whatever reason, which is probably shouldn't hire them in the first place. But whether it's that or whether it's just you're throwing a party at your house and somebody gets injured and they want to sue you for it, you can actually fall back on your home insurance for that to protect against lawsuits, as well as medical payments. You can't use medical payments on yourself. If you break your leg at your house, you can't do that. That's, but for somebody else, you can, as a protection to hopefully get them to not sue you, And then last thing, just real quick, deductibles. This is a huge one. Deductibles are a lot of times, it wasn't like this 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Almost all the time right now, they're a percentage of the coverage A amount. So there's 2 deductibles. All other perils, anything, like I was saying earlier, that's on the list of covered perils, and then wind and hail, which is named loss. And so typically right now, not always, but typically you have 1% for all other perils. So 1% of 400,000 is 4,000 for like a water claim. And then 2% for wind or hail. So it'd be 8,000 in that scenario for a wind or hail claim. Now, I do have carriers that do 1% on both. It's just going to be more premium. So if you have it in the budget, we can talk about the difference between those, but it just comes down to cost really at that point for people. So yeah, that's the ins and outs of kind of what a policy would look like. And then we would, go into all the other details on the call. But yeah, any questions?
You have to carry home.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Levi will still be here in case you have any questions after. But so for the sake of time, we'll run through this pretty quick. The final details process, this is where a lot of the work behind the scenes is being done. You'll be getting emails, keeping you updated on things like the title company is checking to make sure everything is in good order, making sure that whoever is saying they're selling the house is actually able to sell the house. There's no liens on the home. Nobody else is saying that they own it or the seller owes them money or anything like that. No lawsuits in progress, things like that, that you're all cleared to go to sell. The lender during this time will also be conducting an appraisal just to verify the loan value is approved. So making sure that all goes well. And then obviously this more toward the exciting part, you'll need to schedule utilities so that when you move in, you'll have water, electricity, and hopefully Wi-Fi as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And that takes you through to closing.
So, is this working? Okay. So it's time for closing. So 3 days before closing, you're going to get what's called a closing disclosure. And it's generally the same information that's on this, but it's going to come from the title company. That the lender has given them the information. All of the debits and credits for both the seller and the buyer are on this sheet. And you're going to look at this and you're going to make sure everything lines up with what you're expecting it to look like. The debits, the credits, you're going to be credited back your option and your earnest money. I should say your earnest money and your option. So that $300 or whatever you paid to the seller, you're going to get credited for as long as you move forward with the whole purchase of the home. So those, you're going to look for those. You're going to look for your lender credits. You're going to look for your down payment assistance, your seller concessions, all of the things that you were supposed to be credited for or that you're supposed to pay for are going to be on this sheet. You just make sure everything lines up. And then you come to closing there, you're going to get information on how to wire, if you have any, closing costs, down payment, things like that. And then you're going to come to closing, you're going to sign a bunch of papers. There's a lot, and some of it is as duplicates. Some of it is the title company needs it. Some of it's the state needs it. Some of it's the lender needs it. Sometimes it's the same thing, but it's just in different forms. So you're just going to be signing a lot of papers. And then once the seller has closed and the money that your loan has been funded to the seller, you get your keys and you move in. And you own a house. Oh, wait, I have a cool slide.
Slide for that. There you go.
So now you own a house. So it's so simple, isn't it? Does anybody have any additional questions? Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to know more about? Uh-huh.
Random, but like, say if you're just going to like browse at open houses, what are some good things to kind of take a look at, and I guess be aware of?
Yeah.
Can
Yes.
Realtors use open houses to collect lead generation, to collect your information so they can follow up with you. So if you're working with a real estate agent, don't give your information. Always give my clients business. Feel free to go to open houses. You're welcome to do it. When they ask you to sign in, they don't get you on. You're not on the calling list or their email list. Good too. So it's what we do. But that's just one thing that I would suggest at an open house is don't put your own. Find your real estate agent that you.
And your real estate agent can go with you to an open
Mhm.
house. You know, you can, a lot of times I'll schedule a list of houses on Saturdays to go look at, and a couple of them are open houses. So we'll go
Yeah.
with you to that. But if you're going in on your own, you know, you're going to be able to tell when you walk in of the condition of that house, how, you know, I mean, the things that I look at just with kind of a naked eye is the house clean? You know, because the condition of the house in that aspect is going to tell you really what the homeowner has done with that house all along. You know, if it's grimy, dirty, gross, the baseboards are yucky, you know, you're going to kind of get an idea of maybe they haven't taken very good care of this house all along. You're looking at the windows. You're looking at, are the seals broken? Are there cracks in the walls that could indicate a foundation issue?
Yeah, I would say for an open house, if you're going by yourself, I would say keep it pretty simple.
Yeah.
Do you like it? I think to Susan's point, is it clean? That can be indicative of the rest of the condition. But do you see yourself there? And if you do, then bring your agent with you, and then we can take a more thorough look. But I think for an open house, especially if you're going by yourself, do you like it? If you don't, no. But if you do, then you can schedule a separate showing and then
Yeah.
and then it'll be private. It'll just be you and your agent, and it'll be much more of a thorough kind of look through the house.
Good agents that are hosting an open house should know about the house. They should be able to tell you about
Yeah.
the house. And many times it's not their listing. They're just their hosting for the open house. That as well. But even when you're hosting it, you should know what the HOA fees.
Right.
Absolutely. But at this point, there's no need to go into the attic or,
Right.
start looking around.
In fact, you really should not go into the attic, because then it puts the seller at the liability of, you know, if you fall or something happens or whatever, you're really not supposed to do that. So. Anything else?
So it's like, I guess like the recommended timeline, because obviously. To actually start.
So what we generally say is let's back up from closing. So closing day, to get to closing, from contract to closing is about 30 days. So now you're at a month. And then to find that house, you want to give yourself about a month. Now, sometimes it can take a little less time. It just kind of depends on, yourself, how I would just say give yourself 30 days, but Haiti.
6 months to a year out. We want to get you pre-approved. We want to look at your credit. We want to address it.
And if you get a pre-approval from a lender, that lasts 3 months,
90 days.
4 months. So let's say you'd want to buy something in July. You could start working with them today, and they could give you a pre-approval letter, because when we submit an offer, we submit the pre-approval with it. We want to let that seller know that you've already done what you need to do to get approved for this house, and you're a solid buyer. So you could talk with them today, and that will carry you through purchasing that house. Yeah.
We've got your information. Has anything changed basically? Has your income changed? Has your employment changed? Has anything changed? If not, you're still, you're pre-approved. And the other point from a timing perspective is whenever you do close on a home, let's say you closed in February, a lot of people are coming out of leases, right? So you're trying to time everything. You'll never have a mortgage payment the month following the month in which you close. So if I bought a house in February, I don't have a mortgage payment in March. My first one is April. So that's important to know if you're trying to align the stars.
And you're not locked, sorry, you're not locked into, he could quote you a rate. You're not locked into that rate until he says, are we locking?
So I think in summary, it's never too early to start looking. But if you're in your head, you say, we're going to go, because as agents, we're always happy to show you. But if in your head, you're like, oh, if I saw the one, I want to be ready. Part of the importance of getting pre-approved is that if you're like, oh, I saw it, I'm ready. This is the one.
Because chances are, if it's the one for you, it's going to be the one for a lot of people.
Exactly. And you, not only that, but when you submit that offer, you want to have that pre-approval so that the seller knows, because we didn't talk about this earlier. So the seller knows, oh, you can actually buy this house without the pre-approval. They're like, where's the money coming from?
Right.
Are you just,
So, I mean, we'll do a soft pull all the way up until income contract.
Josh.
Quick question for you and maybe Darren, if I'm pre-approved for 500K, but I'm putting in an offer at 400, should I use that 500K pre-approval or should I get that changed?
We really should go with a 400.
Yeah.
We should have it adjusted.
because you don't want them to know like, oh, well, you're not offering offer price.
Messes up your negotiation power.
You have the money right here. Just give us the money. No, you
Right.
want to start right where you want to start.
Yeah.
That's good.
And we can adjust pre-approval letters so something else I want to say on that is the difference in working with a lender and let's say a bank or an online, which you don't even just remove that from your thought process. But the difference in working with a lender versus a bank is I can call Darren at 6 o'clock on Saturday evening and say, hey, we found a house. Can you send us a pre-approval letter? And we have it at 6:15. I can't do that with a bank. The banks work Monday through Friday, 9 to 3 or whatever it is. So, but having a relationship with a lender or a mortgage broker is going to be the best scenario for you to go for. And they have lots of places they can get the money from. A bank has one place.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to have a lot better options for you than working with a bank or those other people.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Yes.
That it would require a 620. Do they do do they just pick one? Bureau that they use? Do they mean it out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So all lenders are required to go off your middle credit score. So let's say you have a 610, a 620, and a 630. It's that middle credit score that's called your qualifying credit score. So that middle score in your example is the one that has to be a 620. Good. So, and not all, most now payment systems are going to require 620, but there are some other programs where you could potentially have a lower middle credit score than 620.
Awesome. Well, if there's no other questions, part of what we're doing today is we are raffling off a gift card. I want to just say thank you guys all so much for coming. I hope this was informational. I hope this was helpful. I hope you leave feeling just a little bit more comfortable. If you do have additional questions, please feel free to come see any of us or any of our partners. I know they'd be happy to answer those questions for you.